Jon Mendez here with another little how-tos. This one's all about small outboards that we tend to put on the back of our tender, how to keep them happy and running in today's modern world. So in the world of petrol driven outboards, we get two varieties. Left hand side here, this is a traditional two-stroke. This is where your petrol and oil are mixed and put into the engine in a mixed format, so there's no oil within the engine itself. And we also have a more modern four-stroke. This is where there's oil within the engine all the time and we just add petrol to make it go. The only difference really between them in operation is this one has a forward and reverse gear, and this one, although smaller and lighter, only has a forward gear. You put it in neutral, spin the engine round to go astern. Works fine once you've got your head used to it. You'll see I've got a few of the things I need to keep my engines running well. Obviously fuel, and then for the black engine I need two-stroke engine oil, and I use a dedicated mixing vessel which allows me to get the ratios right. Our engine uses 100:1 ratio. Too much oil and it smokes. Then once a season, towards the end, I usually put some petrol system cleaner in to make sure the carbs or the injections correctly looked after. Bit of grease, so if I ever have to take the propeller off I can put it back on and it removes. Some spray which I use which does corrosion prevention, find that very good indeed. Some good old GT85 which I spray over the whole engine to keep it all running nicely. Grease gun, there's grease lube points on some of the engines which require a bit, and a spark plug spanner in case I ever need to remove it. Fuel quality is also very important. The much more modern engine has this E5, E10 sticker on it. That means it can cope with both 5 and 10% of ethanol within the fuel. Our older engine was designed before we had all these sort of strange different type fuels. So I only ever run it on super unleaded, preferably one with no ethanol in at all, which has to be mixed with the two-stroke oil. Now I've just set up a jury rig to allow me to show you some of the things that I think are quite important. All I've got is a large dustbin with my engine attached, water because obviously it needs to cool, and this is fresh water, so this is going to work for our end of year flush. Now it's very important that we do an end of year flush. We can either do it with muffs which go on the bottom of the engine and attached to a garden hose. I don't like them because the water pressure is really hard to get straight, so I just prefer to stick it in a big bucket of water. Most mariners have a bucket suitable for you to use. Stowage of your engine is really important. Now these more modern four-strokes, they only like to be positioned usually one way up. There's usually a arrow somewhere or the manufacturer's indication as to how you can store the thing. Two-strokes in comparison, you can just kind of chuck it in the locker, and as long as you've turned off the fuel tap on the top so that there's no fuel escaping and made sure the tops, they're normally pretty happy. This little jobby here is the breather. We need that undone to allow air in when the engine is running to allow the petrol to work its way through. Other things to always note: kill cord, really important, needs to be on, worn generally around the leg if it's tiller steered. I'm not a fan of on the wrist, they pop off, but where the kill cord really kind of important. Throttle control on nearly all is just a twist grip and it doesn't return, so you have to turn it to what level you want. This little position here, that's the starting position, so when you put it there, might need a little bit of choke to start. On this one we pull it out, a couple of pulls and it will start. Ease the choke back in as soon as it's running and then drop the revs to tick over. You don't really want to engage gears except to absolute tick over. So once it's running, life is good. Once they're running, four-stroke and two-stroke are identical. And what I'm going to show you is what I consider good close down procedure, and then a couple of things to keep it running nicely for next session. So once you've got the engine installed on the transom of your boat, first thing obviously is turn the filter on, and then we open the little bleed cap to let air into the system. I'm assuming that you've put some petrol in the tank. Then we move our way around to the front and we pull the choke out, turn the little throttle to that little red mark I showed you. Kill cord would now be attached if I was in the boat, and give it a good pull. Almost cool. As soon as it's running, it's quite a warm day, I put the choke all the way in. Now I can just drop the revs once it's had a little warm up, we can then, if we're on the boat, pop it into gear, and you'll see even at just tick over, it's moving quite a lot of water, a little bit of red, and you can see straight away, a little bit of red, and then back to tick over, back to. Once we've finished for the day, we want to turn this fuel cock to off. That means now we're running the fuel down inside the drive, and I raise it to a fast idle to use the fuel that's in here. So now with the fuel fully drained from the fuel tap, that means it's also drained the fuel. If I take this top off and show you, all the way from where it comes out of the tank, down through the little fuel pump, through the injector system, and drained what's gone into the engine. So all that's super, no problems whatsoever. You can just about see there, if I rattle it, you can see we've got a fuel level of there. So if this was end of season, I would now take the engine off, take the cap off and drain that fuel out and just pop it into a car that obviously ran on petrol. I want to leave this as empty as possible. The fuel does not keep well. After about 3 months, it's deteriorating in quality and loses some of its octane, which means it doesn't explode so well. So I would drain that fuel for the winter. For now, if I was using it again within a month or so, wouldn't worry. The other thing I would do at the end of the season is I would come round where my spark plug is, and you'll see that's really inaccessible. But Yamaha are quite clever, they give us a little port on the outside. And I would just remove my spark plug and then put a tiny, like 2 mil of oil into the cylinder itself. And then it won't start, especially if I take the kill cord off, but there's no fuel. Just pull it over a couple of times with the spark plug removed. And that allows me to make sure that I've got some lube inside the engine, and that keeps it nice and safe for the winter. So on my end of year, so this is not a service, this is just what I do so the engine's ready to run if I need it. On this engine, the spark plug's tucked right down in this little corner, quite difficult to get out, but Yamaha very kindly provide a little blank that we can push out, and that allows us to get a spanner in that little hole there. So traditional spark plug wrench, the little spanners that they give you are generally fairly hopeless, so I prefer a better one. Hardest bit's getting the lead off. Actually that came off quite easily, so spark plug lead out of the way. I'd be putting a little bit of waterproof grease in that hole or on the end of the spark plug just as part of my annual maintenance. And then spark plug spanner goes in, and once you've got it started, they're normally only finger tight after the initial friction. Take that off. If you're doing this at sea, of course the secret's not to drop anything in the sea. And as this comes out, and you can see there, that little white bit, that's the electrode and the pin. And that little white, no great black sootiness, that's running really nicely, very happy with that. So now what I want to do is put a couple of drops in that tiny little hole where my finger's pointing. And that's almost impossible vertical. So I'm going to take this off, lay it on the floor, put a couple of drops of oil in there, and then I'll put it back up vertical and turn it over with the spark plug out on the starter handle just to move that oil around inside. And the idea behind it is that it's lubricating the bores and just providing a little bit of anti-corrosion. Now this is what I was on about. This one needs to be laid down. It's got a carrying handle which kind of gives you a big clue, but it has to be laid down at this angle, otherwise the oil leaks out the air intake. Now the spark plug hole is all the way down in there, so not easy. So all I'm going to do is tip the engine so it's a vertical drop, and then I used to use a straw, but I can't seem to find one at the moment, so we're just going to aim and I'm sure we'll be fine. So we'll drop a bit of oil in there, stand it back upright, put it on its rest, pull it over a couple of times just to make that oil go round inside. That's my little bit of oil going in. Aim wasn't too bad. So now I'm going to pop that spark plug back in, put it back on the rest and pull it over. So I've got the spark plug in my hands, it can't start and the kill cord's not on. So all I'm doing, and it's really easy because there's no compression, because there's no spark plug, and that just moves the oil around inside and make sure that everything's nicely lubricated. So cover off, spark plug back in, for goodness sake, don't cross thread it. So just use your fingers, you'll feel it go. There it is. Once it's all the way to just over finger tight, wrench on, and it's a nip up. We're not trying to do this thing super tight. There we go. And then the fiddly bit is getting this spark plug cap back on. Again, the hole from Yamaha makes it slightly easier. Lined up. Good solid push. There we are. And that means that we're now lubricated inside, but still ready to start if we need. All we'd need to do is put fuel in. My last job to leave this for the winter would be to drain this fuel out. Hopefully that's given you my view of some quick, simple top tips. Keep it running. Most importantly, run it dry, store it correctly.